Ukrainian brigades and battalions in the Kurakhove pocket in southern Donetsk Oblast are in a precarious position. But they're not giving up without a fight. One of Russia's top objectives in Ukraine right now is to eliminate the 9-mile-deep Ukrainian-held salient between Andriivka in the west and Dalnya in the east. Anchored in the north by Kurakhove and in the south by a string of villages including Kostyantynopolske, the salient is the main impediment to an uncomplicated Russian assault on Pokrovsk, a Ukrainian fortress city 25 miles to the north. As long as the Ukrainians control the Karakhove pocket, they can threaten the flanks of the Russian 90th Guards Tank Division as it marches on Pokrovsk. But the pocket itself is in danger of being cut off across its flanks. If the Russians can attack from Kostyantynopolske or some other southern village to Dakhny or some other village in the north, they could encircle elements of several Ukrainian brigades. The Russian military command assesses that Russian forces will be able to close the Ukrainian pocket, the Institute for the Study of War in Washington, D.C. noted. But the Ukrainian Marine Corps is determined to prove the Russian commanders wrong. In a fierce battle on or just before Tuesday, a Russian assault group made a move on Kostyantynopolske. The Ukrainian 37th Marine Brigade met the attackers. The Russian group, riding in at least 5 armored vehicles, was under drone surveillance the entire time as it rolled along a country road toward Kostyantynopolske. The vehicles managed to drop off their infantry before the Ukrainian bombardment began. Drones swooped down. Artillery burst among the vehicles. The vehicles were destroyed, the Estonian analyst War Translated reported. The destruction of the vehicles effectively stranded the disembarked Russian infantry in Kostyantynopolske. The 37th Marine Brigade sent its 505th Battalion to mop up. At least one ex-British Mastiff armored truck cornered the Russians in a clutch of homes in Kostyantynopolske. The Mastiff's gunner opened fire with a .50 caliber machine gun, shredding the Russians' shelter. The Kostyantynopolske skirmish is just the latest in a series of effective, but small-scale, combined arms actions by Ukrainian troops defending against Russian assaults in Donetsk, as well as in Kursk Oblast in western Russia. But local victories may not amount to a wider win for the Ukrainians, especially in Donetsk. Russian forces have continued to use frontal mechanized and dismounted infantry assaults to advance slowly but gradually into eastern and central Kurakhove and south of Kurakhove into Dalnya, which supports larger Russian efforts to eliminate the remaining Ukrainian pocket, ISW observed. With each yard they advance across the pocket, the Russians come closer to closing the pocket and cutting off thousands of troops Ukraine can't afford to lose. A 4-square-mile patch of Kursk Oblast in western Russia is a graveyard for Russian vehicles and a harbinger of a looming catastrophe for the Kremlin as its year-long offensive in Ukraine begins to falter. Kriegsforscher, a Ukrainian Marine Corps drone operator supporting the 20,000-strong Ukrainian force that has held a 20 by 12-mile salient in Kursk since August, tallied around 90 wrecked and abandoned Russian vehicles just in his 2 by 2-mile sector on the northwest edge of the salient. That's an entire brigade's worth of vehicles. Ukrainian losses in the same sector have been much lighter, just 20 or so. A 4-to-1 loss ratio in favor of Ukraine isn't unusual. In fact, it's only slightly higher than the overall 3-to-1 loss ratio for the whole 34-month wider war on Ukraine. 14,500 destroyed Russian vehicles against 5,200 destroyed Ukrainian vehicles. What's notable, and ominous for the regime of Russian President Vladimir Putin, is when and where the Russian armed forces lost all those vehicles. They're what the Russians have left behind in 2 waves of unsuccessful attacks on the Ukrainian salient in Kursk, over a period of 6 weeks starting in early November. A year after Ukraine's summer 2023 counteroffensive ground to a halt, and Russia launched its own new offensive. Kursk has arguably become the locus of the fighting, although, to be clear, fierce battles continue to rage in and around Chasiv Yar, Toretsk, Vovchansk, Kurakhove, Vuhledar, and other cities and towns in eastern Ukraine. Putin has given his forces until February to eliminate the Ukrainian salient in Kursk, and for good reason. The Russian regime anticipates the January 20th inauguration of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump will mark a new and volatile era in U.S. relations with Ukraine.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your...
Trump has pledged to cut off U.S. aid to Ukraine while also leaning on Kiev to accept peace terms favoring Moscow. Some of Trump's closest advisors have openly disparaged Ukraine. When Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reasserted Ukraine's independence in a social media post on November 16, billionaire Elon Musk, who spent $250 million boosting Trump's campaign, mocked Zelensky for having an amazing sense of humor. Whatever happens after January 20, Putin wants to be fully in control of Russian territory as the politics play out. It's for that reason the Kremlin massed 60,000 Russian and North Korean troops, and some of the Russia-North Korea alliance's best heavy weapons in Kursk, and began hurling them at the salient 2 days after Trump was elected on November 5th.
Гармата! Постріл! Гармата! Постріл! Постріл! Гармата! Постріл! Постріл! Гармата!
Можемо, Саня, розповідай, що ти